Good morning everyone, my name's Alison. You've seen me many times before, but today I'm going to give you a little demonstration on how to plant this beautiful shrub. So before I get to the actual digging, there's a few things that we need to have in our tool belt so that we make sure our plants are successful and that they survive over winter. All right, so first thing here, soil is so important, and what we recommend is adding some sort of compost or organic material. Our favorite is sea soil. It helps break up clay, it retains moisture, and it just gives extra nutrients to those new little roots that are trying to get established into the soil. I also have a gardening fork here. I find this particularly handy if you have a plant that's really root bound. It just helps to break up and loosen up that root ball. And two other soil amendments here. So we've got Bonemeal. This is a granular fertilizer that you put in the bottom of the hole before you put the plant in. I usually do a few handfuls for every foot of plant. So for trees, you would use a lot more than you would for a shrub. This is a slow release and it makes nutrients available in the springtime for your plants. So they have some added nutrition. And then lastly, our favorite, we swear by this, Root Booster. So Root Booster is a transplant fertilizer, and it actually has two rooting hormones in it that aid in new root hair growth. And the new root hairs are the ones that take up all of the water. So that helps them get established a lot quicker, and they're more successful that way. All right, so now to the digging. And these guys out of the way. So I've chosen this yew here, just a little bit of site analysis. This is a more shady spot, and yews are very good because they can tolerate sun and shade. I talked about this in one of my unique Evergreens videos. So one of our favorites. So we're gonna make the planting hole 1.5 to 2 times the diameter of the pot. So this pot is quite large. The hole will actually be quite large as well. So just do some digging. And note, in an existing bed, you will have some roots, so make sure that you have a good sharp shovel to get through these roots. And if you notice as you're digging that you've got a lot of clay, you may need to dig some extra clay out, add some new topsoil and a little bit of extra compost. So the ratio to soil and compost is 2/3 the existing soil and 1/3 compost. We don't want to plant just in compost because it makes it too rich around the new roots. So I've got the hole dug here, and I've dug it just as deep, if not a little bit deeper than the pot, and about 6 inches on either side of this container here. Okay, so now the planting area is prepared. I'm going to throw in a few handfuls of bone meal. So this is the bone meal here. It's a nice granular mix. You just throw some into the bottom. Do a few handfuls. Mix it in a little. And compost. So again, the ratio is 2/3 the existing soil and 1/3 compost. Okay, so compost, and look at this. Look how nice and lovely and rich, full of moisture. Beautiful. So I'm just gonna throw a few handfuls in to start and work that in with the existing soil that's in the hole already. Okay, that's our sea soil. So far we've used 2 of our amendments. Just mixing it up with the bone meal at the bottom here. All right. So now we gently take the plant out of the pot and notice if it has an aggressive root system or not. This one's actually quite lovely. You can see all these beautiful hairs, but we never want it going into the ground like this with any smooth edges. This is where the gardening fork comes in handy. We start at the bottom and we loosen up the roots. So what you're doing is exposing all those little root hairs, which allows it to take up as much moisture as possible. And we always go from the bottom up. We never want to rake down. So you will do some damage. You can see some roots coming off, but look at still, we still have this whole root ball here. So once it's nice and teased, don't forget to do the bottom, very important. We can place it in the hole here. So you want to make sure that the top of the soil of the plant is level with your grade. So you may need to raise it up a little bit. Make sure that it's level. For larger trees, you can actually lay your shovel across the top of the root ball. And then as you go, backfill around with the soil that you scooped out with the extra little added bit of compost and gently pack. We don't want to compress it too much. We want to make sure there's no air bubbles. And as you go around, just double check, make sure that the root ball is not exposed. It's nice and level. And we always recommend that for new plantings, you build a little bit of a bowl around the plant. Oh, the soil's got lots of worms in it, it's great. Okay. So this makes sort of like a catch basin for the water that we're about to add and for any time that you water afterwards. Okay, so our little shrub is in. Our root ball is not exposed to the top, it's level with the grade. So now what we're gonna do is water it with the Transplant Fertilizer, which is our root booster. So I've got a pail of water here. And use whatever container you have at home, but just make sure you follow the instructions on the back of the bottle. I know that this pail takes about 3 caps, so I'm just gonna mix that in. And it's very important to dilute root booster as it is a concentrated fertilizer. And I'm very dirty. Okay, then we slowly add it to the bowl. And you can actually fill the bowl right up and then let it soak in. And then do that again. Thirsty soil. So I've just added about 5 gallons of water, which is roughly the size of this container here. And that's a good gauge to keep in mind when you're watering in the future. So rather than watering every day, we like to actually give it a good soak once per week or every few days if it's really, really hot out. What this does is encourages the shrub to reach out and find its own water source rather than relying on you. And it also creates a stronger root system. So filling up this bowl, and if you notice, if you wash, you can see some roots, just add some more soil. And that should be good. So always check the moisture with your hand every few days. If it's dry, always water. If it's still moist, give it an extra few days. We don't want to make it waterlogged. So a question that we get often is, so I want to put landscape fabric down, and we're like, okay, you can do landscape fabric. However, you see this bowl area that I have here. You have to make sure that this stays free of landscape fabric. All of the roots that this shrub has are in this area right now. If you were to cover that up, there's no guarantee that your shrub or your tree is going to get the water that it needs. So biggest thing with watering, again, always check every few days with your hand. If it's wet, don't water. If it's dry, water it for sure. Root booster, you can use that every 2 to 3 weeks throughout the summer. And bone meal, again, in the bottom of the hole for that spring nutrition sort of uptake. So slow release, good for spring. Okay, so that's how we plant a shrub. You follow the same principles for a tree, but again, just make this bowl, amend the soil, and tease those roots. Thanks a lot.